Your technical specialist, I cover everything from device management, so Intune or Config Manager, all the way through Office deployment. That includes Teams, how to deploy Office. Do I use M365 apps version of Office or the Office activated through KMS? I help customers with, getting set up. What is M365? How do we get access to our licenses that we have? And so I cover a wide gamut of things. Pretty much the thing I don't cover is more of the security items that a peer counterpart of mine does, Sam, who's on some of the future webinars that we're going to have. So Sam and I are peers, so he covers the security, more of the advanced identity. So today is all about, hey, I'm a new user of M365, maybe I'm using it, or hey, I just need to get access to my tenant. And so what I'm going to walk you through is just an overview of the M365 administration portal, or we commonly refer to it as admin.microsoft.com, because that's really just the URL, but really it's the M365 Admin Center. And where I want to actually start this conversation is just what Microsoft provides education organizations is free O365 A1 licenses for all of your students, faculty, staff. Everyone gets those licenses for free because you're an education organization. And so I'm going to walk through a lot of this stuff, but I first it's fundamental to understand what you get for free from Microsoft. And so just in here, if I come down and I go into billing and I come into licenses in this portal, and I'll show you here, I've got quite a few other licenses in here, but it's these ones right here. Actually, let me make my screen a little bit bigger so you see it. But the one is Office 365 A1. So there's one for faculty and there's one for students. You get unlimited of those for your faculty as staff and students. So that's what you get. What comes with that? I'll just go into the specific users, show you here in a second. And so, if I pull up a specific user that has that assigned, within each license, there's a lot of products. So within Office 365 A1, as you can see on the right-hand side, there's a whole lot of things that you get. Device Azure Active Directory, you get Exchange, so you get free email. That has unlimited email storage associated with it. Not like Google, which they're limiting currently. They just announced it, but you get unlimited storage in your email. You get Planner. You get Microsoft Teams for free. You get Office on the web. You get SharePoint. You get Teams. You get OneDrive for Business, which has unlimited storage also. So OneDrive for Business, unlimited storage, email, unlimited storage. You get all of that for free as part of just being an education organization. So a lot of customers just don't understand the value of what they get for free. And so that's kind of the purpose of today, is just help you understand what you get for free and how to access it, and then how to get started. That's what kind of all of this I'm going to be talking about today. So just understanding what you get for free, that's Office 365 A1. Everyone should have access in order to get to that. Now, hey, Eric, that's great. We get that. How do we get to this portal? How do we get to the M365 admin portal? I help a lot of customers get access. You may be locked out, or maybe you do have access to it. But anyway, if you don't have access to your organization's M365 admin center, then please email myself or Glenn, and I will help walk you through that. It takes about 15 minutes to walk you through that process. It's pretty quick and simple. So if you don't have access in order to log on to admin.microsoft.com, then let me know. Shoot me an email, post your contact information, but everyone should have Glenn or Tracy or somebody just say, hey, Eric said reach out, so I can get access to that. So once you have access to your portal, then you have access to the licenses. And what your next step is really just within this admin portal. This is your top level. There are a lot of sub admin portals. In the bottom left is, there's a security admin portal, there's a compliance, endpoint manager, that's Intune, Azure Active Directory, kind of think of that's your Active Directory, but it's Azure Active Directory, Exchange, SharePoint, Teams. In fact, if I click on all admin centers, there's a whole lot more. in here. There's a lot of kind of these sub. And so what we've done is at a high level, kind of, that's what this overarching M365 admin portal is. And so it pulls together a lot of all of those. So if, a good example is if I go to users and I go to active users, it's going to show me all my available users that I have. Now it's pulling all of that data from Azure Active Directory, because just like on-premise, your user and device identity repository is your domain controller, your Active Directory. Well, same in the world of M365, but it's Azure Active Directory. And so what this admin center does is it's just pulling, showing you kind of your users on that. If I want to go to the Azure Active Directory portal, I certainly can, and that can give me a very specific focus. I can look a lot of details in here about all the users and groups and more stuff. But like if we were to just take it up at a high level, that's what the admin center does here. Some of the other cool things it does is like if I click on Bill Pete, it's going to open up a blade over here and just give me a snapshot of various information about him, like what his username, what his alias is, sign in, you know, what groups he belongs to, does he have any administration roles assigned to them, and various other information. Does he have any devices managed by Intune? Well, he does, because this is my test. It'll show me information about that particular device and user. Licenses and apps. This is where you can do licensing assignment. There's like 3 different ways, 4, maybe 5. I don't know. There's a whole lot of different ways to assign licenses, and I'll walk you through some of those. But here, you can actually assign licenses. We call it this like at a per user level. So if I want to assign a specific license here, I can select on it. And then down at the bottom, you can do click the subproducts within that. Mail, if I click on that tab, it's going to show me various other things about mail for that particular user. OneDrive, I can click on that. It's going to show me just at a high level snapshot of some other information. What percentage is being used. It doesn't matter because it's unlimited. Kind of does. You're actually gated. You have unlimited, but it's gated. So by default, users, you can set it to 5 terabytes. When a user reaches that 90% mark of that 5 terabytes, you can open a support case and they'll raise it up to the next tier. The tiers are on, it's tier gate. I like to say gated because you just need to have access to go through a tiered kind of implies something else. It's just gated unlimited. So once you reach that 90%, you move up to the next gate. It's effectively unlimited though. So you get to see some snapshots of this. You can reset the password up here if I wanted to do that, block or sign in a user. So if I wanted to add a user, kind of very, very simply, I could click add user, and then over here I can type a name, Frank Jones, display name, Frank. You could give them a password if you wanted to. You get to pick their domain. So as you can see, I've got quite a few different domains in here. I've got my custom domain. It's called duvalschools.com. That's one I owned. The DNS provider is GoDaddy. And so I've added that, and I'm going to show you guys how to add that here in a second. I've got a couple of subdomains that I've added here. And everyone is going to have a default on Microsoft.com, because when you create a tenant, we need to have a domain just associated with that. So everyone gets an on Microsoft, but you can add your own custom domains, just like I have this duvalschools.com. You'll have yours, contoso.edu or whatever. So I'll walk you through of how to add your own custom domain. It's very, very simple. In this example, I can enter a password, automatically create a password. You can send it to a person. Guys, just walk through this simple wizard. Here you could do licensing assignment. Let's say I want to do, well, Frank is a new faculty member. So we assign the A1 license, and then down at the bottom here, remember how I said there's a whole lot of products associated with that license? So these are ones in here where you can come down and you can select, I don't want him to have Kazala, and no, I don't want him to have Forms or Staff Hub, or, you can come and selectively choose what you want to have in here. Skype for Business, you shouldn't have that because that's being deprecated here in about 5 months. You should be using Teams. And then just click next. I can assign an admin role here if I wanted to. Profile, I can fill out job description, department, kind of all that same stuff that you're used to with on-prem Active Directory. You have all of this data associated with it. Next, and finish adding, and that go ahead and adds the user to that. And you could send an email template and add another user, and now Frank has been added in there. That's cool, Eric. But we have hundreds, if not thousands, of students, faculty, staff. How do we get those users in here? Because you're not going to go off and do them individually. So there's a couple of different options for you in that case. One of them is called School Data Sync, and the other one is Azure Active Directory Connect, or used to be called, maybe if you go out there, DirSync. But what that allows you to do, so let me talk about both of those. SDS, School Data Sync, and the other one is Azure AD Connect. Azure AD Connect is a sync tool that you install on your domain controller that's on premises into your campus, and it synchronizes your users from your on-premise domain controller up into Azure AD. So it synchronizes those users up. It'll synchronize the passwords and everything. So that is the quickest way to get your users into Azure Active Directory. And so by marrying up those two on-prem with your Active Directory, it'll synchronize the domains and everything. That is the quickest and fastest way. Now, some organizations, majority have their teachers, faculty, and staff in on-prem AD, but they don't always have their students, but their students might be in their SIS. So the other one is SDS, School Data Sync. That is a connector that connects your SIS to Azure Active Directory. And so just like you had another sync tool, this is a different type of sync tool, but it will synchronize your users that are in SIS, your students, faculty, and staff over into Azure Active Directory. And so it'll create those user accounts also. There's some other additional benefits of using SDS that are really kind of focused around teams. Because you do all your class rostering in SIS, it'll actually synchronize those classes. So a good example, Mr. Pete, 4th grade class, and he has a whole bunch of students associated in that class. That SDS sync will actually synchronize over Mr. Pete's class and create a Microsoft team for that. So then all that Mr. Pete has to do is actually log into Teams, and he's already associated, his class is already showing up in there, and all of his students are also. And all the students, all they have to do is log into Teams. So it does all of this synchronization. It synchronizes and group creation for you. It's a really great way. You can also do, so if you don't use SDS or you don't do the AAD sync, you can manually input them in. You could use PowerShell as another one, so command line option. Another one, I know a lot of people have users in Google. So that's probably one of the other top questions that I get is around like, hey, our students are using Gmail, but they want to have access to what Microsoft gives them, OneDrive for Business or Teams, because that's an all-inclusive type of remote learning experience for that. And tap into those services that they have through Microsoft, or to download the full version of Office. And so how can they get access? So Google, there is a connector that goes, but you got to do a little bit more configuring single sign-on, so it'll automatically create those users. But the other way is you can export out of Google as a CSV and then come in here and import. Can you do it here? No, not here. But from the Azure Active Directory portal here, you can actually come in here and do a bulk operation and do a bulk create. And basically, it'll prompt you for what your CSV file is, what you exported out of Google, and then it'll just automatically create them. So short answer being, there's many different ways of getting your users into M365 or Azure Active Directory, because Azure Active Directory really is the identity repository that kind of everything revolves around. So you have users or devices, they all reside in Azure Active Directory. This M365 is really kind of a nomenclature that wraps around all of our services and products around that. So that's kind of a high level on that. I talk kind of fast, as you guys can kind of tell. And so if you need me to slow down or if you have a question, feel free to post that in the chat. And so I'll be moderating it. And so Tracy and others will be looking at there.
And you do have one question, Eric, on that past segment. Is there an SDS per SIS?
There's a couple of different ways. So if I come out to sds.microsoft.com, that's the best place. So you could do a, see if it goes through. Oh, it's going to route me that way. So you know, CSV, if they use the PowerSchool API or OneRoster API or CSV import, pretty much all of those are supported in terms of that. So it kind of depends upon the SIS and if they support those APIs. And if they do, then it's an automatic. If they don't, then there's the CSV process that you can do. The short answer to kind of SDS is we have a team dedicated to helping you set up SDS. It's not something that you have to go and figure out and do. Basically contact myself or Glenn. We will start a fast track engagement for you, and we have specialists that will help you deploy SDS. So they'll hand walk you through setting it up and configuring it and getting it all working and everything. So that is a complete white glove service that's free to you. Again, free for that SDS. So let us know if you want to do that. If you want to kind of go out and self-service sign up, just go out sds.microsoft.com. There's a link here, get started for free, and then sign in, and then you could go and submit a fast track request. So that's a DIY. If we submit it, it's a little quicker because if you go this route and you do it yourself, they're going to ask you a whole bunch of questions. And if I submit it on our end, it's a lot quicker. So it takes me like 3 minutes. It may take you, half an hour in order to submit that and do everything. So just for the sake of make it simple on you, just email, say, hey, Eric, we want to get SDS up and going, and I'll take it and get everything, make sure it's all connected up for you on that, get that engagement going. So that is how you get your users into that. Well, how do we add our custom domains? There's a couple of different ways of doing it. You can actually add your custom domain within the M365 portal here, but I actually prefer to use the Azure Active Directory portal. So in the bottom left, you click on Azure Active Directory portal. If I click on Azure Active Directory, and if I make the screen a little bit bigger, if I scroll down where it says custom domain names, here's where I can add them. And you just simply click add custom domain, contoso.edu. It's going to check it. I'm going to click add domain. I'm not going to do that one. I don't want to add it, but basically what you know what? Well, schools.com. I could do that. So it's going to add it, and it's going to ask you to verify with the TXT record. And so you just go to your DNS administrator, whoever, and they're going to have to add this TXT record. After they do that, at the bottom down here, you got to come and click this verify button. So DNS sometimes takes a while to refresh. So, GoDaddy, it's like 5 minutes. Some of the other ones take an hour, if not a full day. So enter that record, either that TXT and MX, and then you come back here and, an hour, like I said, or maybe a day, click the verify. Microsoft will go out, do a check to make sure that that is valid. If it is, then it's going to add that domain and it's going to be available for you to use. So when you're adding subdomains, you don't need to actually do a verification, just the root domain. So what I'm saying is this duvalschools.com, I had to add that one. But if I want to create another subdomain, I don't have to go through that process. So if I come up here and I say sports.duvalschools.com, it's going to automatically just add that one because I already own the root of that domain. So where's it at? Sports, because I already have added the root duvalschools.com. You can just have a secondary domain if they wanted to. In fact, sometimes you might have in your tenant just a subdomain listed. You may have students.dualschools.edu or something like that listed. So short answer being yes, you can add your own custom domains in there. Like I showed you, it's pretty simple setup process. It's not overly difficult in terms of that to set that up. So that's the easiest way to get your domains in there. And then those connector tools, while I'm right here, Azure AD Connect is right above in this. And so in here, there's a link. It's not in here because I already have my connector set up. See, I have sync status. It's enabled. It last synchronized less than an hour ago. In fact, it synchronizes every 30 minutes by default. Does single sign-on, pass-through, everything. There's a whole lot to it that I'm really not sharing. But just, I think what's really key is to establish connection between Azure Active Directory and your on-premise. This sync tool does that. So if you come in here, there will be a link that says download it. Go through the express setup if you do it, or if you get stuck, reach out to me. I'm your technical specialist. I can help you walk you through that. But if you do want to go at it yourself, do the express setup on it. But first, make sure you add your own custom domain. So that's the key note is make sure the domains that are on-prem are also been added into Azure Active Directory like I just showed you before you run that tool, because that way it'll marry them up. If they're not, they're going to default to the onmicrosoft.com. We can always go and change it later on, but just in the sequence and order of events, it's always best to make sure you add your domains before you set up the Connect tool. Alrighty, so that's how to get your users in there. That's how to set up. Back in the admin center up here, we kind of went over setting up your users and everything. I'm going to continue on the left-hand side. So devices, I don't spend a lot of time in devices in here, but if you have devices that are Azure connected, they can be connected in one of 3 different ways. So I really don't like this view here. I mean, it's cool. It shows you some data, but again, I like to look at Azure Active Directory here, really. So if I come in here and I go down to devices in this middle blade, it's going to show me a whole bunch of information in here. A device can be connected to Azure in one of 3 different ways. So this top one here is Azure. And I'm looking at this column here called join type. It's Azure AD joined. That's where a device is domain joined directly to Azure. It's not domain joined on-prem. It's domain joined to Azure. So when you go to sign into the device at the login screen, it authenticates directly with Azure. Users don't need VPN. They don't need, anything to line of sight with their domain controller, because Azure is the domain owner of that particular device. And so as long as you have an internet connection, those users are going to be able to log into that device. Plus password resets are immediate on those devices. So if your end user needs to change the password, they don't have to use cached credentials or everything, because it's directly communicating with Azure. It'll show you the owner and some other information. The other way a device can be connected is Azure AD registered. That is just a single sign-on way of having your device connected to Azure. It remains domain joined to on-prem or as a workgroup device. This is really a bring your own device scenario, or a non-Windows device, because of an iPhone or an iPad or a Mac or even an Android device, they can't be domain joined. That whole domain joined is really a construct of Windows. So those devices will be Azure AD registered. And then the last one is hybrid Azure AD joined. And that's where a device is on-prem domain joined, and then that connector that I spoke about that's synchronizing users up into Azure AD, well, it also can synchronize devices up there. So that's how this device showed up here. And when a device is hybrid Azure AD joined, this is awesome. By the simple fact of everything is synchronized with that. So when a user logs into that device, it's still domain joined on-prem, still getting group policy, but they have single sign-on associated with it. So when they navigate to office.com or anything, it's going to be single sign-on to that. And if you're using Office, or if you have any of the like A3 licenses, M365, A3, or others that have Windows associated with it, or Office or Intune, well, you can actually get rid of your KMS because it'll do Windows activation in addition to upgrade. It'll actually activate Office for you also, just by doing that, having that SSO connection. We'll get into that in some future webinars, but just really today of understanding, hey, there are 3 different ways a device can be connected to Azure. So, all right, we've gone through that particular part. On the top left, groups. So in Azure AD, there's lots, just like an on-prem groups, you can have security groups, you can have distribution groups. In here, I'm kind of scrolling down. There's M365 groups. Those are what get created when you create a team in Microsoft Teams. Let me get back. Actually, you know what? I actually like the view better in Azure AD here. So if I come back over here and I go to groups, so you can see my list of groups here, and then the group type, whether it's a security group or M65, membership type. There could be 2 different types of groups. There's going to be assigned groups or dynamic. Dynamic means it's based upon a query, like dynamic user group. Let's say you could have a rule that says, hey, anybody whose name starts with the letter A, automatically add them to this group. And so that easy way to run that query and do group membership based upon that query. Source, cloud. That means I created it here. So I went right up here, and I'm going to show you this here in a second of how to create a group, or your groups through that connector that I talked about, that Azure AD connector that's synchronizing your users and your devices. It'll also synchronize your groups from your Active Directory up into Azure Active Directory. It does not synchronize OUs, but it will synchronize your distribution groups, your security groups that you have, and you can leverage those existing groups in Azure AD. You can't modify them there. You still have to modify them on-prem, but they're synchronized up. So that's kind of groups. But in the meantime, let me show you how to actually create a group. So here, so again, there's a security group or M365. Those are the 2 different type of cloud groups that you can create. I'm just going to pick a security group, and I'm just going to say site. You can enter description, but here's the membership type, either assigned, that means a static, like only the people and devices in that group are ones that you statically assigned, or there's dynamic user or dynamic device. I think you get so if I picked assigned, I can come in here and I can manually add certain people, to this particular group. So where's Frank? He's the one I created earlier. So Frank Jones, I can come and select him and add it. So this search is just searching all of Azure Active Directory for that. That's great for kind of one-off those assigned. But if I want to do a dynamic, let's say a user group, so if I click Add Dynamic Query, you get this really cool query builder. The way I kind of like to think about that is creating an email rule, like, hey, if you receive any messages, then put it in this folder or that folder. So in here, you got all these attributes on a user object. So you could say display name, here's a good one. And then you got all these if, and, or, buts, equals, not equals, starts with, I'll just say starts with the value, E. So it writes the query down here, for all of, other people. You can go and edit that query if you really wanted to. There's some advanced capabilities with that, but I just like to use the simple GUI based editor here. So in this example, it's going to add all of the people whose name starts with the E to that. And I just click save and I go through and I click create, and that's going to create that particular group. And so it'll go through, and then if I click into it, it's going through evaluation right now. So because I just created it. But the other cool thing that you can do on this is you can assign owners to that group. So people who might not be global administrators or other, you can assign them as owners for that particular group. Members, of course, are people that belong to that group. The other is licenses. So I spoke earlier about the whole licensing assignment. So you can create a group, add users into that, And then instead of just assigning a license individually to people, you can do what we call group-based licensing, where you have this group, and I could just simply say, hey, everyone in this group, I want to have these licenses here. I click save. Now, that's done up there in the corner. Now these license Office 365 A1 will be assigned automatically to any member of that particular group. So that's an easy way of doing what I call group-based licensing assignment. And this works for groups that are synchronized. So if you have these groups that are synchronized from on-premise, what do I have? Let's see if I can, got a couple. No, that's not the one that I wanted. I got too many play things here. All right, so this was the one that I had here. Play one GS. Imagine this is a, I don't know, it's on-prem. I was using that. Maybe that's your teachers, faculty, and staff. I can reuse that by simply assigning licenses. Oh, and I did that earlier. I think that was in the last webinar I assigned M365 A5 licenses to every member of that group. So that's the easiest way to do licensing assignment, because you already have been doing administration on those groups on-prem. They've been synchronized up, and all you do is assign the license, and bam, by simply assigning the license, that Exchange and Teams and everything just lights up for those particular users. So great way of doing all of that. So that's kind of groups in general. Kind of going down a little bit more, roles. So within Azure AD, there's many roles. What I find is most K-12 schools, you've got anywhere from 2 to 5 people in your IT organization. You don't have a need to really have deep role-based access where you do delegative administration. Majority of everyone is just a global administrator, but in the event that you do want to do delegative, there's a whole bunch of roles in here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on here. Everything from a printer tech to a passwords administrator to a network admin. There's a whole lot of roles in here. What I find is most people in K-12 are just global administrators. So everyone has God mode, if you can kind of think about it like that. Kind of continuing down on the left-hand side is resources. I'm not going to touch on that. Billing, billing's an important section simply because you get to see what licenses that you have. And you can actually do licensing assignment from here also. So if you wanted to assign faculty, you can come in to that particular. What I love to see is what licenses are assigned to certain people. You can export this out if you wanted to. You can do a licensing assignment to individual users. Like I said, there's like 6 or 7 different ways of assigning licenses. What's really key out of this is just, this is where you get to see how your license is and your usage overall. I also want to show you up here on the left is purchase services. So if everyone has A1 today, but if you want to look and evaluate any Microsoft product, you can do that. We offer free trials for that. Whoops. Screen gets wonky sometimes, so I got to refresh. What did I click? Where did my billing go? Where did my billing go? Huh. Oh, I clicked the pin button. So under purchase services, I get to clicking too fast. So if you want to try out, so you get A1 for free. Kind of the next level up licensing pack that most customers evaluate is M365 A3. And so in here, so there's Office 365 licensing and Microsoft 365 licensing. So in here, you can come and try all that out if you wanted to. So mine isn't going to show it because I don't have an education tenant. But in here, it would show like Microsoft 365. It would say A3 in here. And if you wanted to try that out, you can click it. You can go through a 30-day trial. Pretty much anything and everything. You have the ability to start a trial. That's the key point that I I want to just convey. So continuing down on the left-hand side, support. You get free support. So you can, if you have email problems, setting up your custom domains, adding users with that connector, kind of anything that Microsoft gives you for free or what you paid for, there's support that includes it. You can buy additional support, of course, through Premier that gives you different levels of support, like a Premier support, but by default, you get basic support. And so just come in here, new support request, follow the wizard, and they'll open up a support request for the issues that you have. So that's really key of just knowing you have free support and how to open up a support ticket. For the sake of time, I'm not going to walk you through those, but just knowing, come into support, new service request. All right, settings. I don't spend a lot of time in settings in here. Domains, you can come and add your own custom domain here. I like to do it in the Azure AD portal, but you can do it here if you wanted to also. I don't really come into other things in here besides org settings. So I would recommend spend some time under organizational settings. There's a lot of individual, looking in here. This is, teams and to-do. So by default, pretty much everything is enabled and on based upon the most used settings. Just like when you install Windows, majority of things are on. But if you want to tweak some things, there's lots of smaller settings in here. So I would recommend kind of going through here and poking through each of these to understand, kind of further settings. So they're not only the ones listed here, but also up at the top, there's security and privacy tab, and also organization profile. So spend some time poking through these, going through and looking at them, and getting familiar with those. So that's your homework. Setup, I don't spend a lot of time here in setup, but if you wanted some guided kind of tutorials for setting things up, these are really, really great. So think of them as guided tutorials on that. Reports, I love reports. So you've got productivity score, which I'm not going to talk into. I'm going to look at the usage reports. The usage reports are fabulous because it's going to show you who's using and how much of what you're using that they are. Now, this is just my demo tenant that I have that I tinker around. So it's not going to have as much, but it's going to show me, how many active users that I have, for Exchange and OneDrive and Skype. You can kind of get into high level kind of dashboard. M365 apps usage, that's Office 365, email, Teams activity, OneDrive files. I think you guys are starting to get the point of that. SharePoint, it gives you these high level dashboards of just overall usage. And when you want to dive into more, let's say there's OneDrive files in here. So I could just click on the view more. It's going to deep dive me into more about that, showing again some high level overall, but down here at the bottom, it's going to show me individual usage, how many files, active files, storage usage and such individually for all of your particular users. So I love reports because it gives you a great snapshot overall of just who's using what and how much of it that they are using. There's some security and compliance in here. What's really cool is nothing to really call out besides just I would spend some time poking around and getting familiar with what's going on. Service health, kind of moving on. Service health is, we're a cloud service, and sometimes there are outages, sometimes there's advisories, sometimes there's incidents. And so if something may not be working, this is the best place to go to look to see if there's a service outage or incident or an advisory that's impacting you. So in here in this example is Exchange Online. Looks like there's one advisory. Multiple geo admins can't view details, and it's going to tell you what it is, and if you want to click into it, it's going to tell you more about what specific advisory that is. There's incidents in here if there's anything, and then a history in terms of what kind of previous incidents, advisories, and outages there have been. So this is a great way to just, hey, is everything green? Is everything working? Are there any known kind of bigger issues that are impacting it? Think of it as like the traffic report. That's the way I kind of think about it. So moving on is the next favorite thing of mine is Message Center. Why Message Center? Well, there's a lot, anytime Microsoft messages, you know, hey, there's something, you know, we're going to be removing, or something we're going to be adding, or something, you know, specific to your tenant and your organization that you need to take action on. Think of this as like your inbox. We post it to Message Center. I like Message Center because it's going to, it's the best way to stay updated. So much changes. We're enhancing things, we're adding capabilities, we're modifying things, and sometimes we deprecate things. And so Message Center is the way to stay basically up to date and current on stuff, because so much is changing. And so just an example in here, you know, let me kind of make the screen a little bit smaller. Can I move this over? You know, updating, announcing a new service plan, Teams Pro. You know, I can read more about that. It opens up a blade on the side over this. Feature enhancements. There's a whole lot of information that comes out, and it's kind of overwhelming if you look at it. And if you see these dates, February 22nd, there's just been 2 posted today. There were some over the weekend, and it's like, wow, I can't even keep control of my own inbox. How do I keep, you know, all of this? I can't follow individually. So you can get a weekly digest where they'll send you just an email that has all of these updates in it. And those come out on Monday. And so that's the best way to stay updated. So the way in order to get those is click on this preferences right here. And you get to pick which services that you, well, actually go to email tab, they changed it. You could pick your primary email that you want to. You could specify other emails in here if you wanted to. And then you can send me emails for major updates, privacy. I just select everything because I have to stay updated about everything. So I get this weekly digest. It usually comes out Monday mornings or by noon, our time, and it just kind of goes over it. I block out a half hour on my calendar at the end of Monday to just review it, stay up to date and look at it, because I struggle with kind of how everything, the rate and speed that things updated with. And so it's a way of keeping up to date of what's going on. So you can selectively choose all of those, and then you'll get those weekly digest emails. I strongly encourage you to subscribe to those. When you get those, block off time and look at what's going on. And again, it's going to cover all the new stuff or old things or enhancements that you have. So kind of moving on a little bit more, I spoke that kind of covers the top half up here on the left-hand side in terms of kind of M365 Admin Center just kind of bubbles everything up. It's kind of the top level. And then you got these sub portals down in the bottom left-hand corner. So there's one for security and compliance. Sam's going to be covering a lot of that stuff in a future webinar. Endpoint Manager is Intune. You don't get that with A1, you get that with A3, M365 A3. Azure Active Directory, Exchange. Like if I want to go in to do more administration with Exchange, I can dive into that specific portal. It's going to load. So want to do any administration around Exchange, you can go and do that. Teams, and like I said, there's all admin centers in here that's going to show you a whole lot more that you have on that. So that kind of summarizes at a kind of very high level the admin center, kind of the workflows that people have. I wanted to leave some time at the end here as we kind of wrap things up and kind of what Q&A that you guys have. So I've been answering questions as I've seen them on the chat, but if anyone wants to post or come off mute and microphone, happy to do that and kind of share. But again, the goal of today was really to give you an overview of just the M365 admin portal, how to, kind of just a snapshot overall. The last is, if you need to get access to this admin portal, you don't have it, again, shoot me an email and I can get it to you. Or the other way is just, was it Azure 80? Takeover, I think was the, Yeah, there's a process here of doing an internal takeover. That's basically what I would walk you through in here is this internal admin takeover if you don't have access for it. So basically you need to create an account, and then it'll walk you through some steps. And basically how you get global admin access is really just to input a TXT record that showing that you verify and own that particular domain that's associated with that tenant. And once you do that, then you get admin access. So you can follow the guide, or I could spend 15 minutes. I think I'm down to 12 minutes is the fastest I've walked a customer through it. So it might just save you some time. Shoot me an email, get on a quick call, and make sure you get your questions answered, and I walk you through that. So that's kind of generally how to get access to those. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute your microphone. Tracy or Glenn, if there was something I missed, I think I got everything off our notes that we had spoken to talk about, but if there was something else that you specifically wanted me to talk about, I can happily do that. While you're queuing those up, Anthony had a question around, is it possible to pull user activity in Teams, voice conference past 30 days? So the answer to that question is yes, if you, it kind of depends. So if you come in here, you can get some data around Teams in here. So there's Teams activity. You click view more. It's going to show you some high level user activity around Teams in here. But if you want a more detailed view into Teams, then go to the Teams admin portal. So my life pretty much day to day is I'm either doing Teams or Intune. And then maybe Office is kind of filled in there a little bit, but that's really where I spend the bulk of my time, is really talking to customers around Intune, which anymore is right around 60–70% of my time. Teams is probably around 15%, because most people have figured out Teams and they really just have smaller questions. So in with Teams, kind of analytics and reports. If you go down to usage reports, there's a whole lot of reports in here around Teams usage, and it can go right back to 90 days right there. So Anthony, that's how you can get, it can go back 90 days, not further than that. You can pull in the call quality dashboard as a BI, Power BI, and you can pull more data out of that. But just what they provide you here is just these selected reports for the last 90 days. Lots of kind of cool reports and that, and then you can dive into it and export it and appear to Excel in the top right corner and such. Cool. Thumbs up. So that was a whirlwind. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. Tracy, Glenn, or anybody, is there any further questions that I could kind of answer and orient people to?
Yeah, this is May with WorldUC. I'm using Active Directory and Azure Active Directory. And I set up map drives with my group policies, but the users in Azure AD, they're getting the permissions to the map drives, but they're not, the drive's not mapping. I have to manually map it to get it to work.
What are you mapping your drive to? Is it an on-premise file share?
Yeah, when they're on premise, I would like it to map.
Yeah, your normal group policy should just be doing that just fine.
Oh, it should be? Okay.
Yeah.
So I got to figure out what's going on then.
Yeah, there shouldn't be anything special in that. I will say, think about migrating those on-premise, and so here's a caveat to that. You can migrate all of those on-prem file shares to OneDrive for Business. In fact, Fast Track will help you do that because, again, you have unlimited data in OneDrive for Business. So think about all of the servers and storage and backup and overhead and power and all of that you're using today to manage people's file shares. Move that stuff up to OneDrive for Business because you're going to get unlimited storage. On those, you don't have to map a drive. They don't need to be on campus in order to get access to that because the data sits in OneDrive for Business, so it's accessible from anywhere as long as you have an internet connection. In fact, it's accessible from more locations because you can get to it from the web just by simply, any of your users can come out to office.com. So that's kind of the logging in. I've been talking a lot about the administration side, but any of your users come out here to that. You can come down to OneDrive. Now you have access. So via web browser, they have clients available on, got my phone, so the OneDrive app on any of the phones that you have on a Mac. Specific to Windows and Mac, there's the full OneDrive client, which will actually synchronize. It's fully integrated with File Explorer, same on Mac, integrated with Finder, and it'll synchronize your files from your device up into OneDrive for Business. But you can think about it as synchronization, but it also is backing up. So anything in your desktop, your documents, or your photos, those are automatically being backed up to OneDrive for Business. And that does a lot of different things for you. One is data protection, data backup. Also, kind of along that data protection is ransomware protection, because if, for whatever reason, your device gets ransomware and that gets file locked, well, you have access to it in OneDrive for Business. In OneDrive for Business, those files are versioned. It's easier to share. There's so many benefits to it. Just a lot of customers just don't understand the value of what it is. They think it's how robust of a capability it has. And again, your education, you get it free and unlimited. So feel free to ping me on the side about that if you want to talk a little bit more about the value of that or how to set it up. It's actually pretty simple. You just need to assign the license and you have access to it.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Tracy or Glenn, was there anything else that I missed or maybe I needed to expand on?
I was checking the boxes as you were talking, so you checked everything I had on my agenda. It looks like we got a question that just came through about file redirection to M365.
So Felipe, do you want to, I could talk in many ways about that question. Could you come off mute and kind of explain a little bit more? That way I can give a more direct answer to that. And if you're uncomfortable with that, feel free to ping me on the side. Happy to do that. I think I tell people to ping me on the side. Here is my email.
Well, regarding file redirection, if you have a group policy that's file redirection on on-prem Active Directory going to your file servers, without the client's sync tool that you have for OneDrive for Business, is that possible to do to basically to OneDrive for Business by on-group prem group policy?
Are you using roaming profiles on-prem?
They're not really on. It's not really roaming profiles because we basically file redirect users' data only, their files, their documents, and their desktops to a file server, but not the other portion where you actually.
No. Yeah, so that's where I was like, that sounded a lot like roaming profiles. So like in the remote world, you call it a user profile disk almost, or kind of roaming profiles. No, we don't have anything like that necessarily. We encourage you to have your local storage and then enable OneDrive, and it synchronizes that up. It doesn't. OneDrive is not a replacement for that.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Well, cool. Tracy, Glenn, what's the next session? Did you have a PowerPoint, kind of just putting you on the spot here real quick, for what our next session is, or what our full sessions are that we have?
I do not have a PowerPoint up. Sorry, I was muting myself as my dog was barking. The work from home life, right, everyone? So coming up, we have 3 more sessions. So on Monday, March 8th at this exact same time, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we will have the Azure Active Directory technical session. So deeper dive into Azure Active Directory. The next session which is on Monday, March 22nd. So these are every other week at 1 p.m. Will be about protecting school data and digital assets in a remote world. So as Eric mentioned in the beginning, his colleague Sam is going to be driving that, all of those security features, all those great things that we're all thinking about. And then on April 5th, Monday, April 5th, again, 1 p.m., Eric will be back with a Teams 101, management, governance, everything you need to know about Teams. And I believe the great folks at Site, Laurel and Libby and Tuda and everyone else sent out a nice flyer that you all use to register. So the links are there. And we would love to see you back and to tell your friends and come and join us.
Cool. Well, if you guys have further requests, post them in the chat, email us. I also want to let you know that we did a lot of content back at the site conference. When was that? Late November, early December. I know I gave 3 presentations. I did a deep dive in Teams. I did an hour and a half on device management. So there's a lot of content available for you as part of that site conference, which was, wow, that was like 3 months ago. It seems like only yesterday, but yeah, that's another opportunity if you're hungry for information. And then, always feel free to ping us also on the side if there's something specific. And again, I am your assigned technical specialist. If you guys have needs, feel free to reach out to me, Tracy, or Glenn, so we can help support you. But I want to be cognizant of the time in terms of that. I'll hang on to answer more people's questions. But I think outside of that, it kind of wraps up today. Glenn or Tracy, if there's anything else left to say?
No, I did throw in the chat, so you might have seen it on that flyer, but we do also offer free, no-cost end user training for your districts. So if you have schools or administrators, teachers that are using any of the M365 tools, from Flipgrid to Teams to everything in between, we would love, as Glenn mentioned at the beginning, there's quite a few teams of people in California that are ready to go and there to help you. So I put that link. It's just www.microsoft.com/site. So just CITE. And that'll take you to the registration form, the sign-up form, and one of our California team members, thank you, Eric, will connect with you directly to help set that up for your district or for your school. And on that note, I'm going to stop the recording, although I know a few of us are going to hang on a little longer.
Yeah. Take advantage of that. Again, free training. I handle more of the management administration, how to set it up. Tracy and team handles more of the training, or teachers, faculty, and staff on, and I put it up on the screen, everything, entire, whether it's Teams or Flipgrid or bookings, kind of depends upon what you have, or Excel, how to actually use the products. They're the experts in terms of that and helping it. That includes Minecraft for Education, which is super hot. So feel free to leverage. There's Tracy's email on there. So this is a good screenshot to capture.